Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. My guest tonight is Anastasia Kravtsova, who is a Ukrainian immigrant to Canada. She's in touch with her family members, both in Kiev as well as Western Ukraine. And given what's going on this past couple of days, obviously with the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I thought I'd reach out to her to get a personal view on what it's like. So, Anastasia, have you spoken to your family members in Ukraine?
Of course, I'm speaking to my family in Ukraine probably every hour or so.
Every hour?
I try to, because you need to understand that people are under psychological pressure too. So I'm trying to be careful and giving them a time and ability to sleep a bit. But of course, I'm checking constantly because some of my family, might be even in a bomb shelter. Some of my family might be all right. So my phone is now, I'm sleeping with my phone constantly in my hand, just in case they're going to need my help.
So tell me who it is. This is your parents and they're in Kiev?
My parents on the west of Ukraine and my sister and her family in Kiev.
Kiev. And remind me, we chatted about this a little bit. Kiev is the way that Ukrainians pronounce the name of the capital city, and Kiev is the way that Russians pronounce it. Is that correct?
No.
Kiev,
it's Russian. Kyiv. It's Ukrainian way, and it's only right way because it's Ukrainian city and it should sound Kyiv.
Kyiv. Okay, I apologize. And there's a major town in Western Ukraine called Lviv. And is there a Russian and a Ukrainian way to pronounce that one as well?
Correct. Lvov, it's a Russian way.
Oh, no.
And correct way and Ukrainian way, it's Lviv.
Okay. I spent some time in Ukraine and in both cities, which I'm forgetting now the right way to pronounce it. And I think what I was taught when I was there was, I guess, the Russian ways of pronouncing both cities. We did also drink a bit of vodka, and we always say Nastrovia. Is that still the Ukrainian way to say cheers?
Nastrovia, it's a Russian way. In Ukrainian, we're saying budmo.
Budmo. Okay, good. Excellent. So back to your parents. So your parents are in Western Ukraine.
Correct.
And so the forces, the Russian forces haven't gone to Western Ukraine yet. Is that correct?
No, it's not true, because forces are in west of Ukraine too. They attacking Lutsk, they're attacking Lviv, they're attacking Ivano-Frankivsk, they're attacking a lot of pretty much every major city in the west of Ukraine. So all Ukraine is under attack of Russian missiles, and every big city and even small cities are in a war. So that's true that some areas are less dangerous than others, but all Ukraine is under attack.
And your sister is in
Kyiv.
And tell me, is she downtown? Is she in the suburbs? Whereabouts is she located?
Yes, she is in actually downtown, 15 minutes from actual downtown, from Khreshchatyk Street. So, and bombing is actually everywhere. So you don't think that Russian just bombing some suburbs or something. Actually, downtown of Kyiv, there are bombing. There are big apartment buildings are destroyed. People are evacuated. People going to bomb shelters whenever we hear the sound. And, there is, I don't know what's the name when the
siren goes off.
Yes, the siren. Right. Thank you.
So I've seen tanks on the TV in suburbs. Are the tanks yet close to your sister?
Tanks are everywhere. When I'm saying, you need to understand, our army is very strong and very powerful. Also the same as people, all nations. This is not a regular war. It is not a war, government against a government. It is a war, Russian government against Ukrainian people. That's why it's not only our army, but actually regular people doing everything they can, including defending themselves and including, stop them in order to stop the Russian soldiers. They're doing everything what they can. So it is not such a thing like tanks in a there are other machines. Everything is in Kiev, but our people doing everything what they can to stop it or disarm.
I just can't believe we're living through this situation. I thought that this was something the history books would be the only places we'd read about it from World War II, and I'm just aghast and shocked. It's surreal that we're sort of living through the invasion of Czechoslovakia or Poland or Austria all over again in our era with Russian tanks, Russian army invading a sovereign country, Ukraine. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more about what's it actually like for a family in Canada and Ukraine, a family member in Canada with numerous family members in Ukraine dealing with war, invasion, and the chance of whatever. We're going to take a break. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm chatting tonight with Anastasia Kravtsova, who is an immigrant from Ukraine. She runs a small business here in Toronto. She's been here for 15 years, and she's got family members in Ukraine, both in Kiev, as well as Western Ukraine. And she's been talking to them on almost an hourly basis through her telephone, which has been buzzing as we've been chatting, and trying to keep abreast, obviously, of what's going on. Anastasia, let's talk a little bit about what's happening here. So you were telling me that in 2014, there really was sort of the first process here of separation between the Ukrainian people and Russian people, and you were describing that families broke apart over loyalty to Russia or identity to Ukraine. Tell me a little bit about what happened.
Well, thank you, Brian. First of all, it was no separation between Ukrainian and Russian people. What happened that Russia took some of our territory.
Crimea in 2014.
Correct. It was Crimea, as we all know. It was Lugansk and it was Donetsk. And they declared such a republics, like independent republics inside of the territory of Ukraine. What happened, why it's happened, because Russia put their forces and they took over those territory. So it was a first war. And when Ukrainians were fighting and saying to the world, like, people, hello, help us, Russia taking our territory, nobody helped us. And we couldn't protect ourselves in order to protect the rest of the territory. And at that time, what happened, that propaganda in Russia, on Russian TV, radio, mass media, or even Facebook, it's saying that we are protecting people because they speak in Russian language, what is not true. A lot of people in Ukraine speak in Russian language and everybody feeling comfortable. So it was just a reason and fake reason to invade and take over the territory. And of course, when the family members from Russia, brainwashed by Russian propaganda, start saying that people who live in Ukraine are bad people, are Nazis, and who making the life uncomfortable to people who speak Russian, what is not true. Of course, that confrontation started. And in some cases, it was easier just to disconnect those family members than to keep fighting over and over, because they believe they are government, they believe they are TV, they believe Putin.
So my understanding is that there's a lot of people in Ukraine that have got family members in Russia, and Russian people that have got family members in Ukraine. It's sort of like Canada and the United States, where there's a lot of families that have got family members or blood relatives on both sides. This must have been really a schism between different families, this fight. And if people in Russia and or Russian-speaking people in Ukraine thought that they were being treated anything like the Jews in World War II, and Putin and the Russian media were calling them propaganda machine, were calling them Nazis, That must have been terrible.
It is terrible. There are, I know even some people got divorced because of that, because in some families, husband and wife couldn't agree.
Couldn't reconcile those different views. Really?
Yes, and it's happening a lot. It's even happening here in Canada too, because
really, in Canada, you had families where there was someone that wanted to stay loyal to the Ukrainian identity and ones that
it's not about identity. No. You're misunderstanding.
Okay.
It's not about identity. It is about propaganda, because when people believe in to Putin and his sick idea of recollecting former Soviet Union, and they thinking that this is a great idea. So how you can believe that? This is war. This is against humanity. This is not possible. So every sane, normal person understands that this is sick idea. So it's not about identity. It is more than that. It's not even about the language.
So what you're saying is that there are people in Ukraine, and certainly a lot of people in Russia, that believed Putin's propaganda that Russian-speaking people in Ukraine were badly treated.
That's true, because that's what they're showing in Russia on the national TV, on their radio, and that's how they keep going for years. So of course, people, when they see TV and news, they believe what they see.
So I spent some time in Ukraine on business. Now this was before 2014, but during the 2007 to 2010 time period. And there were, lots of people speaking Ukrainian. There were a lot of people speaking Russian. There were people that were sort of, took me to the Ukrainian banks that dealt with the West and the Russian banks that dealt with Moscow. And I was shown the Ukrainian Catholic churches and the Russian Orthodox churches. And there really seemed like there was this sort of separation. And I described it at one point in time as it felt like the Anglos in Montreal and the Francophones in Montreal, that they worked together and they lived together, but they really were two solitudes. Is that at all fair?
I don't think so. No, it's not true. Because, for example, west of Ukraine, yes, they are mostly it is Ukrainian speaking population. East of Ukraine and central Ukraine speaking mostly Russian. But also a lot of people speak still Ukrainian because state language is Ukrainian. So basically, if you're working or if you need to write any documents, it is in Ukrainian. So people speak in Ukrainian anyway, but in everyday life, they might use the Russian language. But at the same time, if you're going to go and speak in Russian, let's say in the west of Ukraine, you're going to feel safe and fine, and opposite as well. So language tension, it is true that it is a bit going on, because Ukrainians saying, if you're living in Ukraine, you need to use our language, what is Ukrainian. But at the same time, if you speak in English, or if you speak in Georgian, or if you speak in Russian, or if you speak in French, it's totally okay, as long as you're a good human being.
But I guess one of the complicating factors is from something, after World War II until 1989, or even after 1989, in high schools and schools, you had to speak Russian. Everyone was taught Russian, and Russian was the language for a long period of time when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union.
You have a wrong information, because in Ukraine, even during Soviet Union times, because I remember I was born in Soviet Union and I was actually going to those schools. All school and all subjects were taught in Ukrainian. Yes, we have a couple lessons during the week where we was learning Russian. But at the same time, we had a couple lessons a week where we were also learning English or German or French.
Really?
So,
okay.
So it was like foreign language, but main language, it was Ukrainian. So this is first to understand. Second of all, to understand that we had in every city 1 or 2 schools where all subjects was taught in Russian, just to make those people comfortable. But they also had some lessons during the week where they needed to learn Ukrainian because it is a national language. So
now Putin has argued that Ukraine is sort of an artificial country that was just sort of created post-World War II, is really part of the former Soviet Union, and that it's almost bringing the Soviet Union back together again. And then
do you believe it?
No, of course I don't, but I'm just wanting to get your point of view. And you know, when I was in Ukraine, people were proud to show me, I think it was called the Minsk Palace, which was the Winter Palace, which is where the czars from Russia would go and spend their winters because it was farther south. Tell me a little bit about how people in Ukraine before this invasion, maybe even before 2014 and that first invasion, thought about Russia. Did they think about it the way Canada thinks about the United States, or did they think about it as a foreign potential invading power?
Well, let's start with a little bit history lesson here. Ukraine history is over 1,000 years old. So basically, we had our Kiev, our capital, what is more than 1,000 years old. How long Russia exists? It's about, if I'm not mistaken, about 600 years. So during the time when in Ukraine, we had our churches, we had our alphabet, we had our, even starting our religion history, it was also almost 1,000 years ago. So during that time, where the modern Moscow in Russia is, there were wolves and forest. So how it could be even possible that Ukraine was just created after post-Soviet Union thing? It's impossible. Just, you know, if you have a people question, I suggest you just open books, learn some history. It's actually fun.
Okay. So given this history where you lived side by side for such a period of time, so much so that in fact, some people, Putin and his propaganda machine, were arguing that you were brothers and you were the part of the same country and part of the Soviet Union. But now they're invading. How can anyone possibly think that you're going to want to rejoin that country after you've been invaded?
It's a tragedy of the 21st century that in the middle of Europe, during the night, we were bombed by Russians, by Russian army, and because Putin said so. And I cannot even understand how his generals actually took this order and make it happen. Where's the people, their souls, their humanity, how they don't realize that this is wrong to take somebody's life just because some sick leader decided to take somebody's territory. That's what I don't understand.
So we were talking about this earlier. Do you think this is the 21st century version of Hitler?
It is, because look what's happening right now. The war started about 4 or 5 a.m. That's where all major cities on the east, on the central, on the west, all over the Ukraine were under the attack. This is a time where people were sleeping and they woke up, because I know, because my family lives there, and they said that children was jumping out of the beds because they heard bombs and they were scared and they didn't know where to run and what to do. So how you would call it?
It's an invasion, there's no question. The refugees is another crisis. Supposedly something like 100,000 people. I've heard 50,000, I've heard 100,000, I've heard numbers above that, have already escaped to Poland and Slovakia. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
I'm not here to judge or give in my opinion, because we don't know what is going on with those families, people. We don't know what is standing behind. It's very easy to give those labels, but we don't know what is happening. What I know for sure, that the majority of Ukrainians are staying, even including my sister who is in Kiev. She would easily could go to the west to my parents, where is more calmly, but she chose to stay because she said, it's my home, it's my homeland, and I'm gonna be here and I'm gonna fight for it. And that's why Russia don't have even a chance to win, because it's not a war between governments. It's not a war between leaders. It's not a war about language. It's not a war about even like religion or something. It is a war when somebody came to my home. Of course, I'm gonna defend it. That's why Putin actually misunderstood and mistreated and underestimated Ukrainians, because he trying to enlarge his territory. Ukrainians, we are fighting for our homeland. The reasons are different.
Well, that impassioned response gives you a sense of, I think, why Putin has been surprised with the resistance in Ukraine, and how some people are thinking that Putin and his generals have dramatically underestimated Ukraine. I hope you're right. We're going to take a break for some messages and come back more about what's going on in Ukraine from a personal family person's perspective in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. Last week, we woke up to hear that Ukraine had been invaded by over 100,000 Russian forces. I'm sitting here tonight with Anastasia Kravtsova, who is a Ukrainian immigrant to Canada 15 years ago, but she's still got family members in Ukraine, both in the capital city as well as Western Ukraine. And she's been in really constant contact with them, finding out what it's like and how they are, and obviously worried about them. Let's come back to some of the personal stuff in just a minute, Anastasia. But let me ask you about this president. I've been very impressed with Zelensky, I think is his name. Zelensky. He was a comic on TV.
Yeah, that's true.
And his TV show was, he was a high school teacher, and he ended up, but just by a joke, almost becoming president of Ukraine in the TV show. And then he ran for president. And I understand his initial policy platform was more peace with the Russians, and to try to actually have a resolution of the problems in Eastern Ukraine. But now he seems like he's standing up more than anybody.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about him and how you and your family members perceive him.
You need to understand, this is he showing the actual how Ukrainians think. We are friendly with everyone. You know, we are civilized people. We are like normal, modern European people who wants to make a business and economy, to grow economy on an equal parts with every country who around us, right? But when you come into our home and trying to take our home, you're gonna meet our inner side, what is independence and very proud Ukrainian side. So, but coming back to the Mr. Zelensky, that's true that as you know, Ukraine is a relatively modern country. And we had a couple presidents, and if you remember, even one of our presidents was kicked out of our country because of Maidan, because it was a corruption. As I'm saying, yes, we're also making mistakes, but we're learning and we want the best for our country. So after a couple disappointments in our presidents, Mr. Zelensky he was a comic, and he made this TV show where he was showing if he would be imaginary a president, what he would be doing. And people loved it. And of course, it was just kind of as a joke. It was a trolling. Nobody was taking this seriously. But then he, as a joke, just ran for a president.
And won a huge majority.
And by surprise, we all remember we woke up next morning looking at who is our president, and it is Zelensky, who is a clown. Everybody was shocked. Everybody was just thinking, oh, I just for a joke gonna put like that he is my president, but hoping that somebody gonna make a right decision. But apparently we woke up and we have a leader of our country who has a zero experience in politics, who has a zero experience on international arena, who has zero experience in running a country. And we actually sober up really quickly. And yes, and I think he was shocked too. And he was kind of learning how to be a leader himself, because sometimes he would do mistakes on a press interviews, or when he was meeting with other leaders and countries, the image what he was creating to our country, sometimes we was like just face palm, like, oh Jesus, what you talking? So yes, it was kind of interesting, but
Kind of interesting.
yes. So, but at the same time, when war happened, that man grew up and became a leader overnight. I think, he became a true leader because he has a very strong position about Ukraine. He has a very strong position what happening and that he gonna defend. And he leading all his people, army and diplomats on a level that we all now just admire him. So, and that's what people saying, that first of all, we thought we got a comic, but now when it is a war, where we see that a lot of actually leaders of other countries are clowns now, and we got a true president.
Supposedly the U.S. Offered to evacuate him, and he said, no, I want your help, but I'm going to stay here.
I didn't order a taxi. Just give me more arms.
More arms. You know, it's fascinating that someone in such a time of crisis has turned out to be such an incredible leader. I've also seen a couple of memes on social media about him in front of a group of people pulling the tank versus Putin sitting on the tank and having everyone else pull the tank, and that one's the boss and the other one's the leader. And I think that's a very apt description. And I think he has been extremely motivating to people. Tell me what you think of the U.S. and NATO's response so far.
Well, I'm not as strong at politics, so I'm not sure how to answer that question. What I know for sure, that now it is a big fight. It is like David against the Goliath. And I am grateful and happy that all world finally see that empire of evil, what is not Russian people probably, but Putin and his surroundings, yes, trying to do to other people. And I'm happy that finally world woke up and see that if we're not going to stop this now, it's going to be too late, because later it's going to be, or could be, Poland or Hungary or Turkey or whoever, because when you are hungry for blood, I'm talking about Putin now. If you're hungry for blood and if you're hungry for territory, and they let you take a little bit piece, what I'm talking about, Crimea. Now he decided to take the whole pie. Not going to happen.
I had an expert from the Macdonald-Laurier Institute that is an expert in global politics on my show last week. And he was saying, if the world allows this justification for occupation, invasion and occupation to exist, that there's Russian-speaking people that need to be protected or want to be part of Russia. He said the problem is that it doesn't stop at Ukraine, that there are strong, sizable minority Russian populations in Lithuania, in Estonia, certainly in some of the former Soviet Union republics,
Moldova, Georgia,
etc. And he said it is very similar to Czechoslovakia in the late 1930s and Austria, such that we've got to stop him here. Otherwise, it will be Poland all over again, just like Hitler invaded Poland after the Munich appeasement, and that appeasement cannot be the solution. But the challenge is that they've got nuclear weapons. And so if NATO actually brings in forces, clearly Russia could threaten to use nuclear weapons. So what do you think NATO should do?
As I'm repeating, I'm not an expert in politics. I'm not sure, because I don't know. I'm sure I don't know what to do. I know that this is a really big problem. It is like monkey with a grenade. who is jumping around and you don't know when it's going to just blow off. So, but I also know that it should be stopped, because otherwise it's going to feel like a criminal just threaten you with a knife and just taking all your belongings. You know, it should be stopped. I don't know which way. I'm sure there are experts who are going to find a way, but I know one thing, that it should be stopped. And unfortunately, it's happening today in Ukraine, in a young country where my people is under attack and bombing, and, you know, and don't know if they're going to woke up tomorrow. So that's why it is a very important message to the world that we need to unite. It's not about Ukraine. It is actually about the world, that we all need to unite and stop the aggressor.
Your sister's in the capital city.
Correct.
Would she go out and actually use a gun?
I'm not sure. We're very peaceful people. We're never gonna go out and use a gun. But if you come to her home, to her kitchen, and try to, you know, to make some bad things to her or her child, then probably arms, you know, going to be fired.
So she has a child in her house.
Yes.
How old?
No comments.
So a young child. And how is the child dealt with this? Can you tell me?
Yes, unfortunately, my nephew now practicing, actually not practicing anymore, because it's already almost a week since war began. But the first couple of days, there's young child, he gonna be actually 6. So he's practicing what kind of pants he gonna wear if it's gonna be sirens during the night, what boots he gonna be wearing, because he said, no, auntie, no, those boots, because those boots have lace and I'm too slow to tie the lace. So I'm gonna wear those boots because they have zipper, but at the same time, they are not my favorite. And I'm gonna wear this jacket because I know how to dress myself quickly. So that's what kid knows now. He knows that if sirens are on and you need to go to bomb shelter, that you need to lay on the ground and cover with his small hands his head, with just in case that wall's gonna fall. Or if they don't have a time, because sometimes the sirens going so rapidly that sometimes you just don't have a time, so that he knows that he needs to go to a bathroom because there is no windows there. And the same thing, just lay on the ground, cover his head with the hands and hoping for the best.
I can't imagine what it would be like to have a child go through, have anyone, but particularly a child go through this.
And there is not only one, it's all Ukraine. It's just one who I know because he's my nephew, but all children of Ukraine are the same, except those souls who are killed. Like today, Russian soldiers killed a family, including children, who was going in their car somewhere, trying to escape the city. And they just kill all family. So how are you gonna call this? How Russians gonna wash their hands of the blood of the kids? When they were bombing a hospital of cancer people, children patients, and they actually fired that when you see those little bodies, children in hospital who cannot even defend themselves, who cannot even walk or run. Or when they was bombing the orphanage with kids inside, or kindergartens. This is not a war against governments. It is a war against Ukrainian children and people. Wake up.
I understand that there's a lot of females that have gotten rifles, gotten arms, and are fighting as almost a militia, not part of the army, but as part of a militia, and actually, fighting for their homeland.
Exactly. That's why they're never going. It's not going to happen that Russia going to take over Ukraine, because we protecting our home. They trying to fight for their sick leader, who is Putin, and Putin huilo.
What do you think is going to happen to your parents?
What do you mean?
Are they going to stay put? Are they going to try to evacuate? What do you think?
Nobody is evacuating from my family. I came to Canada for my personal reasons, and it was my choice. And it happened 15 years ago. And my family is staying in Ukraine because it's their choice. If I would try, if they would want it, of course I would do something to bring them here, but they don't want it. They want to stay in Ukraine. This is just, personal choice. So now when it is a war, it's not even about choice. It's about dignity. They're never going to leave. The same like all our Ukrainian people, they stay and they fighting. Nobody running.
So Canada has offered accelerated refugee status to Ukrainians that want to come, particularly if they have family members here in Canada. Would you consider doing that? Would they consider doing that?
I asked them, of course, I asked them and they said no, because my parents said we lived here and we work here all our lives. We have here our, home, friends, job. Why we would go somewhere if it is everything here? If I need to die here, then okay, I'm gonna die at least in my home. The same like my sister and her family. They're young professionals, very talented youth. It is the future of Ukraine, and they chose to develop Ukrainian country and do their business over there. So no, they also decided not to come. Yes, definitely we're going to each other to visit each other. That's called traveling, but nobody is immigrating. I actually was in Ukraine a month ago when everything was starting, and when Canada said that all Canadian citizens should leave country because they was closing even embassies, and other countries were closing embassies, and because it was a threat to start a war. So people knew it, but honestly, nobody quite believed it. So it was a shock when it happened. What is happening right now, it is a shock. But I think Ukrainians and world is already waking up, and and more action should be taken.
We're chatting tonight about what's going on in Ukraine with someone who's got family members in both the capital city as well as Western Ukraine, an immigrant 15 years ago from Ukraine to Canada, about a personal experience. And, I thank you for joining us, because you really get a sense of the passion, the fear, the confidence, the love of the homeland, all at the same time from Anastasia. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to take a final break and come back with some concluding comments in just a minute. Stay with us, everybody. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. We're chatting tonight with Anastasia Kravtsova about what's going on in the Ukraine from a personal standpoint. Anastasia immigrated from Ukraine to Canada 15 years ago. She's a small business person. She has a beauty salon in Toronto, and she's been in Ukraine most recently just a month ago. She's got family members both in the capital city, which is correctly pronounced Kyiv, and in Western Ukraine, she's got her parents. And I presume you've got friends elsewhere in the country. And she's given us quite an impassioned perspective on what it's like to have family members that have to go to, and young 6-year-old kids that have got to go to bomb shelters, and parents that don't want to leave. And sisters that are young professionals in Kyiv that don't want to leave because they've built a future for themselves. Before I ask you for some comments, I want to raise one other issue if I could. My former father-in-law was Ukrainian, from Lviv. I apologize, Lviv, and that's Western Ukraine, and very nationalistic Ukrainian area, I think. And he hated Russians, and he blamed Russia and Stalin for something he called, on the comparable to what happened with Jews in World War II. I think it was called the Holodomor, and it was the forced starvation of, he said 6 million Ukrainians, and he said that he couldn't understand why Ukrainians and Russians were all friendly given that past. Can you tell me a little bit about the Holodomor and what that meant for the relationship between Russia and Ukraine?
Thank you. This is a great question. And Holodomor, it is really a very dark and tragic chapter in the history of Ukraine, because when Bolsheviks came to power, they try to collectively force other countries go and join Soviet Union. And one of those countries was Ukraine. And of course, Ukraine is very independent and peaceful country, and they didn't want to join. So what they did, they took power and they made people to starve to death. And I know, because this is something what we talk in our family, it's something what our grandparents was heard from their parents and passed to us, their grandkids. So we know. And so it's unbelievable. So they would starve people to death in order to join their communist party. So yes, it was a genocide. What is happening right now? The same thing. Just instead of Bolsheviks, now we have Russia, who he's already trying to take over the power and force Ukraine to join their sick leader Putin.
Do you have a message for people, given what's going on? I do.
In this time, I want to say support words to our army, to people of Ukraine, to everyone who is there. Guys, stay strong, because we finally have that chance to show not only Russia that we are wrong guys to mess around, but the whole world to show that even small country is not afraid to stand up for their own rights, freedom, and dignity. So stay strong. And if you guys want to help everyone around the world, just please pray, because we need now that support. I don't care. Is it Jesus, Buddha, Allah? Every support is amazingly needed. So please pray. Glory to Ukraine.
Anastasia, thank you so much for joining us tonight and telling us a little bit about you and your family's perspective and experience. Because I didn't think any of us thought we'd be in this situation, which is really akin to the starts of World War II in the 21st century. In 1989, there was a famous article written about the end of history, that we thought it was all going to be over and that it would all be peace and loveliness since then. And it's just amazing that we're living through a dictator invading a sovereign country with 100,000 soldiers and tanks and missiles and barrage and cruise missiles and the like. It's just astounding. But I would like to close by saying, let's put ourselves in 1938-39. And if we wanted to have stopped the subsequent 5.5 years of World War II and the massacre, the genocide of what ended up happening in World War II, what would we have done with Hitler when he threatened to invade and then he invaded Czechoslovakia, when he took over Austria, when he then invaded Poland, even after promising not to? What would have we done? What could have we done? What should have we done? And knowing that if we had done it then, we could have stopped what had happened, the millions of people, both soldiers as well as innocent people that died thereafter. And that's what we should do today. And I think the economic sanctions just aren't enough. I don't know if NATO forces should move in, but I do know that we cannot allow Putin to take Ukraine, because if Putin takes Ukraine, what is to stop him from taking Estonia, Lithuania, Belarus, Moldova, Georgia, Kazakhstan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and recreate the Soviet Union and recreate the Cold War that we spent 50 years from 1945 to 1989 trying to dismantle. We don't need the Soviet Union back, and we don't need the Cold War back. And we can't allow tyrants like Hitler or Putin to gobble up countries, innocent countries, sovereign countries, at the point of a gun. And I have to say, and I hope to God China is not like this, but if we allow Putin to take Ukraine, What's to stop China from taking Hong Kong, Taiwan, and more? We need to stop it. We cannot be Chamberlain. And I worry to death that if we don't take more actions than we've taken so far, history will describe the leaders of the NATO countries right now akin to the way they described Chamberlain. We need a Churchill. We need a Roosevelt. Where are they? Thanks for joining us, everybody. This is the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. I'm on every night on 960 AM. You can stream me online at www.saga960am.ca. Every night, Monday through Friday at 6 o'clock. Thanks for joining us. Anastasia, thank you so much. And I will be praying for your mother and your father and your sister and your nephew.
And Ukraine. It's not only about my family, it's the whole country.
I will be praying for the whole country.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night, everybody.